Okay, we continue in the book of Shmuel Aleph. We are in Perek Zion, Pasuk Zion, chapter 7, verse 7. So, what is happening here? As we said yesterday, Shmuel gathered all the Jewish people up together in the place called Mitzvah. He told them to do tshuva, and they did do tshuva. So now, one of the most outstanding things, one of the finest moments in Jewish history is about to be displayed. Vayishmu Plishtim ki hiskabshu b'nei Yisrael hamitzvah. The Plishtim heard that the Jewish people gathered together in Mitzvah. Vayalu sarnei Plishtim el Yisrael, and the governors of the Plishtim ascended towards the Jews. Vayishmu b'nei Yisrael vayiru mipnei Plishtim, and the Jewish people heard about this, and they were very much afraid of the Plishtim. So what's going on over here? Hashem is bringing about a situation that the Plishtim will agitate the Jews so that they will fall into the hands of the Jews. So how does Hashem create this? He says when the Plishtim heard that the Jews were gathering together, so they figured there's going to be some kind of rebellion going on against the Plishtim. Why are all the Jews gathering in this? It is a gathering place, and then many times in the past, the Jews gathered there to go to battle, even amongst themselves or against others. So it looked like this was preparations for battle. Now, and therefore the Plishtim go up to take a look what's going on, and they figure it's time to attack the Jewish people. Now the Jews didn't understand that Hashem was doing this to orchestrate one of the most amazing miracles that ever happened. So we see, continuing in Pasuk Ches, and more so, are the Jewish people prepared for a battle at this time? Shmuel called them up to do tshuva, right? So when you're coming to do tshuva, you're not coming with your rifles and your bows and arrows. You're coming to Shul. You have your talis and tefillin, right? So and it was a whole tshuva gathering. It was not a military gathering. And now what's happening? The Plishtim are now coming up against the Jews, and they want to destroy the Jewish people. So this is why they were so much afraid, because now we've come to do tshuva, and look what's happening. The Plishtim are coming; they're armed. Who knows what's going to happen? Pasuk Ches. Vayomer b'nei Yisrael el Shmuel. So the Jewish people say to Shmuel, Al tachareish mimenu misok el Hashem. Do not be silent from calling from calling out from Hashem Elokeinu, v'yoshienu miyad Plishtim, and save us from the hands of the Plishtim. So when they saw what was going on, they saw that Shmuel had trust in Hashem, that Hashem would take care of them, and because he was very much convinced that the Jewish people, that Hashem will have heard his prayers. And they said, you shouldn't be so quiet from calling out to Hashem, because we're very much afraid, and it's impossible for us to win in a war against them. So you have to pray more that a great salvation should happen through Hashem, because our swords aren't going to be able to do anything. So in other words, they're saying, you better keep praying, man. So what happens in Pasuk Tes? Vayikach Shmuel tlei chalav echad. Shmuel takes one nursing goat, Vayaleu ola kalil Hashem, and he brings it as a burnt offering before Hashem. Vayizak Shmuel Hashem ba'ad Yisrael, he calls out, he screams out to Hashem for the Jewish people. Vayaneu Hashem, and Hashem answered him. And how did he answer? Vayi Shmuel mala ha'ola, Shmuel is bringing up the ola, the burnt offering. And the Plishtim came forward to the Jews in battle. They're ready to go. They're charge. And then, Vayareim Hashem bekol gadol bayom ahu al Plishtim, and Hashem gave forth a tremendous noise, exactly like the most amazing thunder, not just stama thunder, like mamish. A boom, unbelievable, against the Plishtim. Vayehumeim, and it confounded them. Vayinokfu lifnei Yisrael, and they were smitten before the Jewish people, as the next text is going to elaborate on. So the Malvin says something very beautiful. He says, when Shmuel was praying to Hashem, so obviously Hashem will answer him. So when Hashem answers, there's an energy of the Kol Hashem. It's Hashem answering Shmuel, as it were. And that same energy that Hashem brings down as a Kol Hashem, a voice of Hashem that is answering him, that is also generating another voice, a physical voice, as it were, that shocks the Plishtim and frightens them in a most unbelievable way. Okay, and that's how Hashem answered Shmuel both ways. He answered him, and the answer sent shock waves through the Plishtim camp. And this is how they get smitten. So, it must be unbelievable noises that came that scared the daylights out of them. And then the Jewish people see that the Plishtim are scared. So then, Pasuk Yud Aleph, Vayetzu Anshe Yisrael min HaMitzvah, the Jewish people left from Mitzvah. Vayirdefu es Plishtim, they chased after the Plishtim. Vayakum ad mitachas lebeis kor, and they hit them until they came to a place named Beis Kor. Meaning to say that the Jews didn't really even have to fight, didn't have to take swords. All they do was run. And by running, they caused a number of the enemies to be destroyed. Either the Plishtim were killing each other or whatever, from fright or scaredness, whatever, but they really didn't have to do any physical fighting. It was just totally just running after them, and they died. Okay, so that was like an amazing miracle. They were totally unarmed. They could have been totally destroyed. And the people now began to see that in the merit of their tshuva, Hashem protected them and destroyed the Plishtim in a most remarkable way. Yud Beis. Vayikach Shmuel even achas. Shmuel now takes one stone. Vayasam, and he places it bein ha-mitzvah, between the place mitzvah, ubein ha-shein, and between another place that's called shein. Vayikra eshma, and he names the place Even ha'ozer. Literally it means the rock of assistance. Vayomar, and he said, Ad heina azaruna Hashem. Until this point, Hashem has helped us. So, what's this all about? So we should say that he wanted to have some kind of memory or a memorial for this miracle that happened, and to say that Hashem helped us up to this point, that we didn't even need to use a sword. So I guess as far as they chased the Plishtim and got them away, they put the stone at that point. Now it's interesting, the name that he chose was Even ha'ezer. Now Even ha'ezer, does it ring a bell in any of our Judaic studies, the word Even ha'ezer? Even ha'ezer is one of the 4 sections of the Shulchan Aruch. The Code of Jewish Law is divided up into 4 parts. The part that we're most familiar is the part called Orach Chaim. Orach Chaim is what the Mishnah Berurah commentary is on. That's why we're familiar with that part. And that deals with, as it says, Orach Chaim, the way of life. Brachas, Shabbos, Yom Tov, all those things. Regular Jewish life in terms of those in Yom. Then they have another aspect called Yoredeya. Yoredeya deals with kashrus and other types of laws related to that. Then we have Choshen Mishpat, which deals with business laws. And then there's another section called Even ha'ezer. Even ha'ezer. And what is that related to? These are all related to issues dealing with women, such as marriage, divorce, yibum, vows, etc., etc. Many of those laws dealing with women. So the question is, why is it called Even ha'ezer? Why call those laws dealing with women Even ha'ezer? Okay, I want to take a shot at it. It's pretty obvious. When God created the woman, what was she called? Ezer Kenegdo. She was the helpmate opposite him. So the Even ha'ezer, the rock of support. So the truth is, women are an Even ha'ezer, right? And the Tur commentary in his introduction to this, he brings this pasuk down of Even ha'ezer. So what does that How does that fit in? Like, what's the common denominator between, okay, so it's called Even Ezer because they're the rock of support, and Shmuel over here is using the same terminology, Even Ezer, and the Tue, when he divided up the Shulchan Aruch into 4 parts, consciously divided he divided all Jewish law into 4 sections, one called Even Ezer, and he refers to this pasuk here as Even Ezer. So what could we possibly think would be the connection between the two? So we could say like this: what's the whole purpose of Even Ezer? All the laws of women that's in the Shulchan Aruch, its purpose is to separate people from people who they should not be with. I mean, that's the whole idea of arayos. The whole when you make the bracha under the chuppah, the kiddushin, right? It's called erusin. Erusin says that we thank God who permitted us, who forbade certain relationships and permitted the relationship of marriage. So the whole idea of that whole section of Jewish law is how to learn to live with other people, either whom we are allowed to have a relationship or whom we're not allowed to have a relationship. And one thing's clear in that set of laws: relationships have to have boundaries. There are boundaries. A man can be with women. How many women? Which women? One wife. That's the boundary. And the woman has a boundary with the one husband. And all the halachas, in one way or another, revolve around that boundary that exists. Even within your own wife, there are boundaries that exist in terms of when you can be with your wife or not. So that's that rock of support, but it has to have boundaries. Similarly, over here, this rock is a symbol of the boundary between the Plishtim and the Jewish people. The Plishtim, who are noted for being immoral people, and the Jews, who are noted for being moral people. So we're placing this rock, as it were, as the Plishtim ran away, and this is the point where the Jewish identity and consciousness goes uphill, and that's a separation from the Plishtim, who are in a different world set that we're in. Okay, so that kind of says, and we don't have to bother with these Plishtim anymore and be troubled by these Plishtim anymore. Okay, Pasuk Yud Gimel. So after that tremendous event, Vayikonu ha-Plishtim, the Plishtim were subjugated. They were humbled. V'lo yasvu od lavo b'gvul Yisrael, and they no longer returned to the boundaries of Israel. V'tehi yad Hashem ba-Plishtim kol Yemei Shaul, and the hand of Hashem was against the Yemei Shmuel, and the hand of Hashem was against the Plishtim during the entire reign that Shmuel existed. And the Malvin explains that Shmuel was a protector for the nation of God, regardless from the external enemy, and also in regarding internal issues. And that is really the job of a shofet and a king, as we will see. It's going to mention shortly. So next week, when we discuss the Jews asking for a king, it says they ask for. It says v'shaftenu malkeinu, that our king shall judge us. V'yetzu l'faneinu, he'll come before us. V'nilcham al malcham useinu, he'll fight our battles. So certainly there's an issue of fighting the external enemies. To that it says vayikanu ha-Plishtim. The Plishtim were subjugated. So that's the first aspect that Shmuel was dealing with. And they were subjugated in 2 ways. That they themselves felt subjugated, that shelo yasvu, that they themselves didn't come to the border at all. There was such fear the Plishtim had of Shmuel as the leader after they saw what happened. So the external enemy was dealt with, that they didn't even want to come and bother the Jews. And it goes even further. It says, so in other words, on the one hand, the Plishtim would not encroach into Jewish territory. But what would happen if a Jew would have to travel somewhere and go through Plishti territory? So Malvin explains that even when a Jew would go through the land of the Plishtim, that's the next part of the verse, it says the Yad Hashem, but the Yad Hashem ba-Plishtim. The hand of Hashem was against the Plishtim, that if they ever tried to do anything against the Jews, Hashem would make sure that nothing would ever happen to Jew, even if they went into Plishti territory. And that lasted Kol Yemei Shmuel. Not exactly all the days of Shmuel. We'll see it's going to be most of the days of Shmuel, because when he got older, the Plishtim did start again. But it really means all the days when Shmuel was strong and able to lead the Jewish people. So this is what he did in regard to taking care of the external enemies. Let's continue. Yudalit. Vatashovna ha'arim. Okay, is there more? Okay, 1 second. Is there more of that? 1 second. No. Vatashovna ha'arim asher lachu plishtim. And the cities now returned back to the Jews, which the Plishtim had taken Meis Yisrael from the Jewish people of Israel. So those cities now came back to the Jews. Because they were subjugated, they returned the cities on their own. Again, because this was really part of the borders of Israel. And you see the cities, Me Ekron, Vad Gas, Ves Gvulan, Hitzil Yisrael. From the city of Ekron all the way to Gas, those are all the cities on the coast of the Mediterranean. And Ves Gvulan and their boundaries, Hitzil Yisrael, Miat Plishtim, the Jews saved from the hands of the Plishtim, Vayishalom, Bein Yisrael, Bein Amori, and there was peace between the Jews and the Amorites as well. So now, how are these cities returned? So the Malvin explains, because since they were afraid to go back into the borders of Israel, and since Hashem had his hand against them whenever they were there, so they kind of just had to give up those cities, even though these used to be Plishti cities for a long time. They kind of abandoned those cities, and the Jews were able to take over these cities, and beyond that, once the Jews were able to overcome the Plishtim, then even other enemies like the Amorites as well, they didn't make any trouble with the Jews as well. So there was like total peace from external enemies. So he had total success in that area, that there was no issues from external enemies. Now we go back and deal with the internal issues that could be a problem for a leader. So it says, Vayishpot Shmuel es Yisrael kol yemei chayav. And Shmuel judged the Jews all the days of his life, and as now he was made a shofet. Now again, what does it really mean, all the days of his life? Was he a leader all the days of his life? So the Radak talks about this, and he says, on the words Kol Yemei Chayav, he says, when he began to be a shofet until he died. Not all the days of his life, but when he began to be a shofet till he died. And he says it's 13 years. It's a measure. Was it also only 13 years? So on the one hand, it was 13 years. So what's all days of his life? So we could say like this: he judged them means that he was even in the times before Eli died, the public was already going towards Shmuel. Even though Eli was the shofet, official shofet, but since the whole leadership was very weak on Eli's part, the Jews were ready, and Shmuel was the rising star. So as the rising star before the death of Eli, he was already considered a significant person, and the mother had already given him over to be given over totally to Hashem the whole time. So therefore, that's what it means. He was a shofet officially and unofficially his whole life. Whereas he always was there to help the Jewish people, even from the age of 2 till he grew up. His whole being was to be dedicated to Hashem and the Jewish people. And as he got older, even before he was the shofet, he still acted almost as an unofficial shofet. But in terms of actual being, so it's interesting. You'll find in some charts they put down Shmuel as a shofet for 40 years, where he wasn't really officially a shofet for 40 years. Really was just 13, but that's the same idea. As long as he had the ability and he had some power, he was involved and he helped them. Now we see something most unusual that never really happened with any other leader of the Jewish people coming up in the next pasuk. And this shows the success he had for all this. Okay. So holach midei shana b'shana, he would go from year to year. V'savav beis el v'hagilgol v'hamitzvah. He would do a circuit from Beis Kel to Gilgal to Mitzvah, V'shofat es Yisrael es kol hamakomos elo. And he judged over the Jewish people in all these places. And this is the new thing that he did. What did he do? He created the circuit court, a sibuv, a circuit. Meaning to say, until now, and this was the big criticism against the leaderships in the past, when we said, the Medrash says, what was the cause that tens of thousands of people died in the incident with Pilegesh Begiva in Binyamin? What was that? Because the leaders, the judges, they sat in their courts and said, if anybody has a case to bring, we'll listen to the case. And if not, not. Shmuel, he didn't sit in his place. He went around from city to city, to village to village. He would come, he'd look and see what's going on in these places. And he wouldn't wait to have to, if people came to him with problems, he was proactive. He looked and he saw, and he probably saw in this village, he didn't like what he saw maybe in terms of education, or he didn't think that tznius was good there, or whatever the issues were. He would constantly being in their face and seeing them and telling them what to do and judging them there. He didn't sit back and wait for things to happen. This never happened before in the eras that we had before. And it didn't really happen later either. It's a very unique thing that he did, and that's what he's saying. He judged the Jews in all these places. Okay. Utshuvasa haramasa, and the pasuk Yitzayin, and he would return to Ramah, Kisham Beisah, because that was his home. In other words, it didn't take the whole year, but he did yearly he did a circuit, whatever it was, a few months, whatever it was. But every year he'd go and check out what's going on in the country. And then he'd come back to Ramah, Kisham Beisah, because that's his house. V'sham Shafat Yisrael, that was the base where he judged the Jewish people. Vayiven Sham Mizbeach L'Hashem, and he built there a Mizbeach for Hashem. And so meaning to say, even when he went back home, he didn't rest there, but he constantly judged anyone who came to him, and he also had a Mizbeach that was prepared to do Avodas Hashem as well, because he still was a Levi, and there was worshiping to do to Hashem as well. So this is what we really would have to say. These last psukim are the golden years of the Jewish people under Shmuel's rule. This was like probably the best times that the Jewish people ever had. Because number one, they're living in Eretz Yisrael. The enemies are not bothering them. The Jewish people had done complete tshuva. There seems to be no problems at all what's going on. He's judging them properly. Hashem is blessing them. And as much as we'll see in the next chapter that the Jewish people are going to ask for a king, and even though the Torah says that there is a day that there should be a king, which we'll talk about next week, but the fact of the matter is, as we'll see in Shmuel's own words in the next chapter, having a king is not the optimal situation. The optimal situation is that the Jews are good Jews without a king. In other words, if the Jewish people, if each Jew has a good relationship with Hashem, you don't need to have a king. You don't need to have a king to enforce these laws. If you have just a Navi, you have the prophet, and the prophet is bringing a wave of spirituality into the country, and he's checking on what has to happen, and the people on their own, without having to have a king boss them around, have the fear of a king, because Hashem is their king. So this really, should have been the way things were for the 300, almost 400 years during the times of the Shoftim. This, I think, is kind of showing that's what Hashem really always wanted. He wanted that there should be, you have to have some kind of a shofet to judge, issues going on over here. But it never really materialized in a very beautiful way, as you see by Shmuel. But Shmuel took this initiative, especially by going around and not letting things, lay back. That made the big difference, and that's how the Jewish people were such a wonderful people at this time. And clearly, you see that there was a strong connection between the peace the Jewish people had with the method of how Shmuel judged as this itinerary shofet. So that is where you see the beautiful era. You never saw this in a leader, and you never saw it afterwards as well. Now,
Rabbi,
yeah.
If it was so successful, and I understand why it was.
Yeah, why didn't it continue?
From a business perspective, why it's so successful.
Right.
Because the leader went out amongst the people and whatever was accessible. Why didn't it reoccur? I mean, because the model was there.
Yeah, so we could speculate on it. could speculate on it, but probably best to leave a fuller discussion for this for next week, because next week you'll see the Jews asking for a king, and you're going to see Shmuel's criticism of them. So we're going to have to explain that first. So once we explain that first, it may shed light on the question you're asking. However, I'll just give you a simple answer. Well, I'll even wait. We'll get there in 3 minutes. In 3 minutes, we'll get to a simple answer. Not a total answer, but a simple answer it certainly will be. Now, it's interesting. Where do I have this here? There is a chazal that say, not that one. There's a medrash that says, oh, here it is. The Radak says like this. It says in this pasuk Yitzayin, he would go back to Ramah Kisham Beiso. So, what does it mean, Kisham Beiso? Of course, that's where his house is. We already know he comes from Ramah. So why does it say there's his house is there? So the Radak says, he says that people from great distances, in other words, he couldn't travel the whole country. I mean, to go in a year, to go all the way up to the north, and all the way down to the south, that would be way too much for one human being to do. And you notice those cities are all within this central region, the 3 cities that are mentioned. So the Radak says that the place that were very far away, beyond his sibuv, people would come to Ramah to be judged there, which I think is interesting as well. In other words, even though it wasn't humanly possible for him to traverse the entire country and every city and every place. It's just not possible for one person. But he did a large circuit within his zone. And I think, word gets out. When people say, wow, look at this shofet, look what he's doing. He doesn't sit back. He's interested. He's going after people. So I think once word gets out, that inspires others to go to him. You're going to say, oh, for sake. You're going to say, why isn't he going all the way to the northern tip of Methulah? He says, well, listen, what do you want from the guy? He can only go so far. He's trying his best. If he's trying his best, we'll try our best too. And then we'll come to him. That's one important point. But then he brings another point. He says, from the Gemara in Brachas, he says, it says, what are the exact words over here? Kisham Beiso, Kisham Shadishro. The Gemara says, every place he went, Holech Beiso Imo, his house went with him. Which means to say, he never took anything from anybody, only from his stuff. And the word Sham means, in all the places of his sibuv, there was his house. So in other words, the way we read the pasuk is Uchuvasa Ramasa, he would return to Ramah. In other words, he would do a sibuv, he'd go around and return to Ramah, Kisham Beiso, and there was his house. And you can say his house was always where he went. He always was with his house. How could he always have with his house? Did he have a trailer or something? He didn't have a trailer. I mean, what's the connotation of your house? My house is everything I need. When I'm in my house, I have everything I need. When I'm not in my house, I need to come onto others. He always felt he was in his house. I mean, say he never took gifts from anybody. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. And that also is very important. That's very important, because once you start taking any money, people start suspecting, maybe they're shochet or this and that and all these things. And then the Gemara says, there's 2 different types of leaderships, and people can choose what kind of leadership they want. You can be like Shmuel Hanavi, who never took anything from anybody, and then you could be like other prophets who, when they visited places, they were allowed people to be mechabed them and to honor them. We have with Elisha, for example, when he went to the woman of the Tzarfatit, he went and asked for a place to lodge, and she gave him things. And if you want to benefit from others, you can benefit. I think there's a big difference. Elisha was not the shofet. He was just a prophet. Not just. He was a prophet. Shmuel was a prophet plus a shofet. So you have to make decisions with people. Navi doesn't have to make judgments. Since he was a judge, it's best never to take a penny from anybody. Although Rav Tzadok does mention that if people would come to him, remember he was both. He was a shofet and a navi. So that means like a navi, like almost like a rebbe, like the Hasidic rebbe. People would come to him. So Rav Tzadok mentions, although when people came to him, they may have given him money as a pidyon, for their tshuva. So he would take that and probably distribute it to tzedakah, but for his own personal needs, he never asked for anything. And I think that's another contributing factor to the fact that he was so well received and people were willing to listen, because they saw he didn't get anything from any of the things that he did. Okay, now let's just begin the next chapter, the first bit, which will lead us into the main discussion for next week. Now we're going to already begin to see a simple answer to Mitch's question, although not a complete answer. Pasuk Ches. Vayi kasher zaken Shmuel. And now was when Shmuel got older. Now you notice something right away. Well, it's here. Vayosam esbanav shoftim shoftim. He now set up his sons to be shoftim over the Jewish people. Okay, in other words, he was no longer able to make the sibuv anymore. He couldn't go around anymore. He didn't have the koyach to do it. He was older. So now he puts his sons up that each one should take, he had 2 sons, so they should, it could even do twice as much, right? And to do judgments. That's what he set up. So you figured he was doing everything he said he should do. Vayehi Shem b'nah b'chor Yoel. The son of his eldest was Yoel. V'shem Mishneh, the name of the second son was Aviyah. Now here already is beginning the problem. Shoftim b'Beer Sheva. They are shoftim in Beer Sheva. Now where's Beer Sheva? In the south. That's already in the corner. So and from the absence of what is not said, what can we imply? What is not said about them? He got older, he makes them the shoftim, and what do? They were shoftim in Beer Sheva.
They didn't go around.
They didn't go around.
No.
They didn't go around.
They stayed in them.
Right? And they stayed in Beer Sheva. And Malvin says, it's bad enough that they didn't go after the ways of their father to go around and do the circuits. But both of them were in Beer Sheva, which is in the extreme southern part of Israel. At least if one would have been in Dan in the north and one would have been in the south in Beer Sheva, it wouldn't have been that hard for people to visit them. They picked a very different... Now, why they did that, the Dummy doesn't say why. But clearly that's a problem. And his sons did not go in their father's ways. And they went after Batza, they went after the money. And they took bribery, and they inclined, they distorted the judgment. Now there's a lot of discussion exactly what this means, but we already have the answer to your question. He wanted to set it up that way, but his children didn't keep it up. So the leadership can only be as good as the next set of leadership that's happened. Now you can ask all kinds of questions. What happened? How could he have such kids? Again, you find this often. You find Moshe Rabbeinu was the great leader, and his sons didn't go in his ways. But at least he had a wonderful student, Yeshua. Okay, Shmuel, on the other hand, I guess he was very busy doing the circuits. And this is the age-old question. Be the devoted leader to the Jewish people, and therefore your children suffer. Or that was the Moshe way. Or you're devoted to an extent, but you give a lot of time to your family. That's the way of Aaron, and that's why Aaron had 2 children who were able to take over from him. I guess we could say that Shmuel was so overwhelmed by, this was 350 odd years of neglect of leadership of the Jewish people. He probably took it all on himself. And it could be there was nobody else to help him. Could be. We can only speculate. But he probably, I guess traveling around, all that took a lot out of him. Certainly he wasn't there to be for his children. And I guess that's the way he was raised. He was raised from the womb as a baby. Your life is for the Jewish people. You have no life of your own. So an amazingly dedicated leader, but probably didn't spend enough time to groom replacements for himself. Maybe not as a criticism. Maybe he just didn't have the time. A lot of businessmen can be very good businessmen, and they're busy putting out fires all day long, and they don't have time to set up all kinds of new, strategic planning. What? Succession planning. You need to have time for all these things. So what do you do if another almana comes with her problems, and another orphan comes with his problems, and there's other Jews are not getting along? I'd like to have time for succession planning, and it just didn't work out, or maybe there was nobody there to succeed him properly. Whatever it is, he didn't have the children didn't follow that way. So
it could also be a classic case of the father wanting his sons to take over, but they weren't ideally suited to do that.
They weren't ideally suited to do that. Can also be, listen, it's all part of God's ways also. You can have the best plans and God doesn't give you the team to play with. And if they weren't the best people to deal with it for whatever reason, so that's all that could be. So that's the simple answer. Okay. Now, from the Malvin, it seems that there was, so there's a whole debate exactly, was it really that they were taking bribery, were they not taking bribery? So the Malvin explains that it was a slow descent. It says they went after the money, so it wasn't after they actually went after their own money, because he mentions it and Rashi mentions it as well. There were all kinds of court workers involved, and Rashi brings down from the rabbis, even though it says that they seem to incline the judgment, the rabbi says that the children of Shmuel did not sin, but they didn't go in the ways of their fathers, who went around, and they didn't do this. And why did they not do this? Interesting rationale. They bring down to give more parnasa for the court workers and the secretaries. In other words, it seems that there was the court where the main city was, and if people come to the courts, it gives rise for employment to the people working in the courts. I guess you charge whatever, $10 per customer, whatever. So if the father would go around, he was doing all the work, and the people who were stationed in the city, they didn't have a lot of business. So I guess they felt, we got to give business to the workers who are here. So that's what it means they went after the money in order to give parnasa for the different court workers, so that people would come to them and they'd have what they need. So, that was a good thought, but it wasn't the right idea. And then the next step would be they took shochad, and then later they would corrupt the judgment. So it like one step led to that. It was a slippery slope. First they stopped going around like their father, right? And then they, said, well, you should give more parnasa for the people over here, and they could do this. And then they start taking a little bit for themselves, and maybe not really bribes, maybe it's just gifts, whatever, never intended as bribes, and then slowly it messes up. So you see, when you drop from that high level, it's a slippery slope until it goes down to the lowest levels. Okay, so next week we will continue this.